The point is investigative journalism from academic perspectives. There are, well, I'm speaking here not representing Addis Ababa University School of Journalism, but I'm just talking as an instructor, my personal opinion. Many questions can come to mind when we talk about IJ from the perspectives of the academy. One of the points is a question of the curriculum. One of the difficult issues related to journalism is the challenge associated with the question that what does journalism curriculum master? That is it. Is there really a subject matter for journalism? Even there are arguments which say journalism is not a profession, because it's not like medicine or accounting or law, which keeps away any person who is not from those particular schools. We know that there are famous and well-known journalists who are not even have a high school diploma. Based on this, people argue that journalism is not a profession. But the foundation of the argument is based on a specific area of education. In this case, the curriculum of journalism and communication is not that of accounting, medicine, law, which keeps away any person who is not introduced with the subjects. But the question of professionalism of journalism rests on the standard of work. Journalism, like any profession, has standards of works. Anyone cannot do it. Whether a person is from a school of journalism or not, a reporter should report according to the standards of the genre of news, feature story, documentary, etc. So this would make journalism a profession. It has a standard, so there is no question about it. Journalism is a profession, a very important profession without which the society cannot be conceived at all. That is a very important point. But still, we don't forget that the curriculum is a kind of compilation of different spheres of discipline. You can find, for instance, politics and journalism, sociology and journalism, economics and journalism, etc. The others are the skill courses, news writing and reporting, feature writing, interviewing, etc., etc. These are the skills. But where is the theory of journalism? That is the nature of this, the field as interdisciplinary field. That is the point. Even some thinkers prefer journalists should be educated in other fields such as political science, law, economics, etc. Then the reporter should be provided with some skill courses in order to handle their jobs in the media. So when we come to our curriculum in Addis Ababa University, previously just 2 years ago, now the curriculum is revised. It takes 4 years to work out a bachelor's degree in journalism and communication. But before, we had only 112 credit hours maximum to cover 6 semesters with average 6 or 7 courses. This is a lot actually. Some subjects or some courses cover only 2 credit hours, some 3 credit hours. So students are expected to cover so many things. It's a kind of introduction. To tell you the truth, we have only 1 investigative journalism course with 3 credit hours under the undergraduate program in Addis Ababa University. That is a kind of introduction. But we have a lot of courses related with reporting, news writing and reporting, feature writing, advanced feature writing, etc. So many courses. The other thing we should keep in mind that journalism is not totally a kind of a skill course. For me, a 24 years old student graduated in mathematics can efficiently teach 7th grade mathematics perfectly. But for me, a 24-year-old fresh graduate from a school of journalism cannot handle news writing and reporting properly because it is something complex. It requires some coaching in the newsroom. For me, the journalist would come to be a journalist not in the context of the school, but in the context of the newsroom. It's like boxing. You cannot learn boxing through correspondence. It's a practice. Of course, I know our students after working for 3 or 4 years who produced amazing investigative reporters. But I don't think this is not the result of the School of Journalism. It is the result of the newsroom in which they practiced reporting. It depends on where they are employed. Are they employed in the private media? Are they employed in the church newspaper? Are they employed somewhere else? It depends where they are employed. It doesn't depend what courses they took in the School of Journalism. So one of the challenges is associated with the experience of students. For me, a 24 years old fresh graduate cannot be a beginner reporter. Just they call it a cab reporter. So investigative reporting is at the level of introduction in the School of Journalism. Even the graduate profile says a fresh graduate in bachelor's degree is expected to be a beginner reporter, to be coached with experienced reporter. That is it. Being a reporter for investigative journalism will come later on, after years, maybe a decade. Thank you.
I think I deliberately gave him the mic, so he covered a lot of things. But I would like to tell you, just to support what he has said, with my experience. I became a journalist without any course, without any training, without any orientation. When EPRDF came into power, I was working at that time in the TTI, in Dossier Teachers Training Institute. Then the politicians was asked, please give us a person who can be a reporter, a journalist from the teachers. So they were thinking of, and then because I was writing some poems, short stories, Jamal is has to be one of. So three of us came to Bahar Dar, went to Bahar Dar to be a journalist without taking anything. And then we started to take some shorter term courses like that. And there wasn't any school of journalism at that time in Ethiopia. And we learned on the air, on the newspapers, that means on the audience. And I don't think so that this is significantly changed even now. Because if you look, for example, the time that we give for internship, for example, in my case, in my university, we give maybe a few weeks. So our journalists are more, take more theory-based courses. And then they go to, and then join a newsroom, and then they produce news programs just without getting more experience stories. So this is what's happening now in much of in our country. So when you come to investigative journalism, it is the highest level of journalism. When you come to feature writing, it is the highest level. Documentary also maybe somehow higher. So journalists has to start from writing news stories, but there are journalists who graduated from School of Journalism, maybe doesn't produce any story, or maybe 2 or 1. This is, I think, the main challenge in making the Ethiopian journalism a professional one. When you come to this professional, it's not professional, whatever, argument. I suppose this was mainly argued by people who were a journalist like me without any getting training in any school of journalism. So they had to defend their position. So they started to say, no, journalism is, it is about what you call, it needs a broad knowledge, whatever, and the creativity. Yes, creativity is very important, but skill is also very important. Without the skill, if the man is a very creative person, he is harder to present a story for radio or television, because that medium, each medium needs a certain type of skill. When I come to the curriculum, I think that is a major gap in the curriculum. And now it's under revision. That's a good start. But still, I believe that a lot of practical courses must be injected so that we can have a type of curriculum that can support, that can create journalists that can be an investigative journalist. So for me, still the curriculum has to cover, for example, we need, for example, peace journalism is very important, for example, at this time for Ethiopia. Do we have that type of courses within that curriculum? And we had what you call the development journalism in Ethiopia. And it was about, yeah, I don't have any problem with development journalism, and I like it too much, but the way we were teaching was, or the way it was practiced in Ethiopia was actually, in a very wrong way. And it was used as a tool of propaganda. So I think much of the journalists that we have, especially in the state media, is a journalist, those who report from one version of the story. Even now after the reform, much of the state media are reporting a one-way, a one version of stories. Not only that, the most dangerous trend in Ethiopian media, especially in the state media, is called sponsored programs, which is against investigative journalism. There are programs called sponsored or outsourced program. These programs are programs, much of them are sponsored or paid airtimes by the state offices for the state media. And the state media believe that they are making money. Yes, I know that some of them, they get 5 or 4 million birrs per year. But that programs are used to promote the good images of that organization. The money comes from the state and moves to another state, the state media, from the right pocket to the left pocket. So this really kills investigative reporting, because that organizations are promoted. Even now, the worst is that Commercial Bank of Ethiopia have a program. Imagine, have a television program. Where are we? I'm really amazing. TD has a program, or what you call this, revenue authority has a program. If agricultural office or bureau has an agricultural program or radio, that is good. If they are doing to teach the people about technical aspects of agriculture, or how people can protect their health, if health minister takes airtime, that is nice, that is the best. But it is not for that type of purpose. For what purpose are they using is that they are telling us, we did this for you, this and that for you. The Ethiopia, you Ethiopians, we are doing for you good and nice. This is an advertisement in the form of a radio or television program. This is the worst time over. This is the worst trend that, as a communication and media experts, we need to think of again and again. Imagine universities have airtime. How many universities you have? So imagine when they take airtimes and promote themselves. Commercial banks now, Ethiopian, the state commercial bank already took the airtime. What about the private commercial banks? They have the right to take. So no need of advertisement. You know that. From a single advertisement episode, a program that is produced by a public relation in the name of just a normal program is more influencing, because it is not presented as an advertisement. So this trend is, I think, the most challenging one, especially in the local medias, in the regional medias. This is one of, and I know one experience, for example, a state media report a negative story, a critical story, not investigative, not investigative, just a very elementary one, just critical to that organization who took an airtime on the same media. Then what that medium did, by their airtime, they produced a counter program against that television station. Then where is investigative journalism? So this type of trends will narrow the chance to have a critical media and investigative reporting, because they are buying airtime. Why they buy the airtime? That's the question. If they do the best thing, the best performance, if they have, the media is there. The state media is there to serve their need. The state media is always looking for a good story, a success story. If success story is there, the media is there. So this is also one of the problems. In that case, the PR is the main player in giving guidelines, the blueprint for the radio and television stations to produce a sponsored or outsourced programs. This, I think, also needs, I think, our attention in order to have a vibrant journalism that can serve the public interests based on investigative journalism.
Okay. Thank you so much. So if you have questions for investigative journalism and academia, this is your opportunity. So oh, great. Okay.
Thank you, Matti. Actually, mine is not a question, just to complement what my colleague have said. I myself is also from academia. From my personal observation, investigative journalism is a kind of underutilized genre in journalism. I think there is kind of mismatch between practice and theory, and in academia we're more of into theory than practice, and the profession itself, I mean, this genre, investigative journalism by its very nature demands too much practice. So unfortunately we are more of theoretical in our nature. Even if you see instructors, most of us are not journalists. Even take myself as an example. Actually, I'm a journalist by training, but I had, I can say I had little or no experience working as a practitioner. So I just directly joined university, and then because of the academic achievement I had while I was studying in the university, I directly became an instructor there, and I have been more into theory, so than applying, practicing journalism on the ground. So most of the students or the journalists, like what has been said before, this is a kind of journalism that requires more of a practice, and then there is no practice in the university. So most of them happen to learn and practice investigative journalism by themselves, simply either through personal experience or by sharing experience from others, or through having kind of different experience sharing, or by personal reading and something like that. So I feel that there is kind of mislink. We're not working in synergy with even with the media institutions. I sometimes feel like we're alienated from the media industries in the country. So I think it needs kind of intensive intervention among academia and the media institutions. That's just to say.
Thank you so much. Actually, you just reminded me of a question that I have been having for a long time. Most of the media houses, they give trainings, specialized trainings, but in most cases, what I noticed personally is someone who's interested in the sports regarded as a sports journalist, someone who is interested in health and have been covering a lot of health events and writing articles, interviewing health professionals, become an automatic health journalist, but with no health background. Have you ever had that experience where you take professionals, let's say finance people, health people, engineers, and then train them as journalists? Do you have such kind of short trainings and courses, let's say a 3-month course for finance people on how to report on finance? Is there any kind of intervention or program like that in any of your institutions?
We don't have in that type of arrangements, but I think this is maybe appropriate to ask media managers. But just to reflect on your point, the best approach to have good journalists who can bring change in the ground, in the society, we can approach in 2 ways. One, journalists can go to universities, like my colleague mentioned, and join the school of journalism. They get experience through practice and learning. They get maybe the first degree, and then they can choose a type of stream they can work, maybe health, agriculture, and then if they prefer to work in agriculture, you can give them basic concepts in agriculture, basic concepts in health, like that, maybe 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years training based on the resource that you have. If we do like that, this is one way. The other way, maybe taking people from economics, first degree, maybe second degree, any other stream, and then give them the journalistic training again, maybe 1 year, maybe 6 months. This is the best way, one of the two. But much of the time we are not doing either of them. That's the problem. Not only this, the one who is working for health this year, if there is some competition in the organization, may become an editor of agriculture. He moves, and then moves to maybe administrative or what you call economics or other programs or sports. I myself work as a radio journalist, a newspaper, a television, a PR, and then I complete every type of media branches, and then become a university lecturer. This helps me to get a lot of experience. I know how radio has to write or for television, but I learned it on the people, on my public. Okay, but we have to learn this on schools. So the problem is, this is one of the problem. I mean, journalists are moving, continuously from one to another program. Not only that, the other problem to have professional, well-experienced journalists in Ethiopia is not only this. There are administrative parties, managers, maybe not only chief editors, process owners, whatever. There are various administrative areas with better payment within the mass media organization. So those best journalists or editors, they compete for a certain position and they move to administrative area. They become idle. And I am one member of Amhara Mass Media Agency or corporation. I am a board member. I am strongly, still now, I am strongly fighting that to change this type of structure. That means if a journalist is the best performer, he's a reporter, has to get the maximum salary in the organization based on his performance. If that's the case, reporters and senior reporters will never move to administrative areas and sit there and just write on the tables about reporting how many news sources. So this is also another challenge when it comes to good investigative reporters, best editors. When it comes to that, still we are losing them. This is one of another challenge that we are facing in the structures of media organized that we have. Now Amara Media Corporation is trying to change this pattern of salary so that people can stay where they are, but still they become the best performer and get the best salary.
Okay, thank you. Your question reminded me the earlier discussion in the morning, if you remember, Purity, who presented about data journalism. She's a mathematics graduate, but now she's working as a data journalist. And what she explained about the significance of data journalism is really very important. And its implication is clear. She's not a graduate from School of Journalism and Communication. She's just came from Department of Mathematics. Now she's working on data journalism. This is really amazing. So this also reflects the two-sided controversy. A group says, let the journalists come from any department, but let them be given training in skill courses, how to interview, how to report, etc., etc. This is still an existing trend. I think we cannot overcome it because of the nature of the profession of journalism itself. It is an interdisciplinary profession. So this dichotomy continues to exist. I remember some 5 years ago, one of our colleagues, academic staff member, was assigned or given a position as a media manager in the government media houses. And he tried to reorganize the news staff. And he recruited 40 journalists from different departments, political science, economics, sociology, economics, etc. And they were provided with 6 months on-the-job training on skills of journalism and communication. I think it is an experiment. And I think the students and those fresh media reporters were actually successful. They couldn't stay for more than a month. They were employed in different media organizations with better salaries. So this is an experiment that could be appreciated, but it may not always work. This time we know some 6 universities have Department of Journalism and Communication, and the number of graduates in the field is increasing. And I think the media staff appear to be homogeneous as far as the academic background is concerned. But the approach is very acceptable. We cannot reject it. For instance, we have a short-term training department at the School of Journalism and Communication, and different media organizations came for a preparation of a kind of short-term training on, for instance, feature writing, news writing, and reporting for journalists who do not have journalism academic background. So we are employing this mixed method. But having a special background in economics, for instance, may give an advantage for reporters on business and economics contents, because they know the subject, and if the skill of reporting, interviewing, etc., is included, that person could be a preferable producer for special contents like agriculture, development, etc. But the School of Journalism and Communication, the curriculum is designed to make a journalist who can practice on any issues and contents. Today, a reporter may produce stories about politics, tomorrow about economics, then about culture, food, etc. But the point is, you know that whoever the journalist is, the journalist doesn't produce content from his mind, but her mind. The question is to facilitate dialogue between the sources and the audience. That is very important. So the key skill in this case is to ask the right question. Someone who was asked to define journalism defined it as a profession of asking the right question. That is it. But you know, asking question is not something simple. It demands knowledge of a specific subject matter. Then you articulate the question if you grasp the issues. That is, critical thinking is very important. Thus, the general practitioner is trained in critical thinking and in the skills of interviewing, news writing, and reporting. The other important thing is students are trained in media management, the structure of the media, how a reporter is coached as a cub reporter, how they progressively go to senior reporter, assistant editor, etc. To be editors in certain media houses. This is really an abuse, you know. It involves so many responsibilities. Journalism is practiced in a simplest way by writing a 4 or 5 paragraph news stories, but which has an impact, a serious impact at the receiving end actually. So the controversy exists. Which one do we prefer? Employing a person from a specific field like economics, mathematics, etc., and providing skill courses and deploy them into the practice of journalism. This is one option. The other option is employing fresh graduates from a School of Journalism and Communication. These are two competing or contending trends that will remain for the years to come, I think. Thank you.
So we have question. Good.
Thank you very much, Mehdi, and Dr. Tashagar and Dr. Jamal. It's not question actually to complement the ideas our revolving around the professional journalism things. So I think in terms of the specialization, when you look at the definition of journalism itself, a journalist somehow has to have knowledge of economics, history, and that kinds of knowledge, and later on skills can be added to that. So I don't think to be a good health journalist you have to be a doctor or health officer, because we have the world has shown us the best health journalists who are non-health background with the health backgrounds. Traveler journalists are not geography students or geography specialized people. It all depends on the efforts of the journalists to become a good journalist. Once the training is given, it all depends on how much time the individual journalist spends on researching and developing himself or herself to know better about the specific subjects they are reporting on. I remember some years back we were working for the BBC Media Action Maternal and Child Health program, which was one of the best radio programs in Ethiopia, in Amharic and Afan Oromo. All of us were non-health backgrounds. We didn't have any health trainings, but the programs, the ABC wrote a letter that, and within 6 months, the Jember has become the best in their transmission based on audience research they had. and Amara Mass Media Agency, we also broadcast there. They wrote the same thing. These programs were produced by non-health background journalists. But what we did was we kept researching. We kept reading about health because we are non-health backgrounds. We have to read about maternal and child health. Sometimes we interviewed doctors, and we knew that we were more updated than the professional doctors. Sometimes I remember correcting some gynecologists because they were trained as gynecologists. They are practitioners. They don't read every day, but we do read every day. We read every findings that science brings out, and that way we can become really what kind of any kind of journalists we want to. So I don't think it's a problem to have journalists with other backgrounds, and then actually people say, for example, someone who studies architecture but has an interest to become journalist is the best one. When you come from other backgrounds, you do best, you read most. So that's what I want to compliment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very brief, short. Okay.
Well, thank you. I think the issue of curriculum has been raised by my colleagues, but just to say a few points about the questions that you have raised. Well, a couple of years ago at Bahar Dar University, we had this curriculum that journalism students were minoring sports, law, and other subjects. I think that were a good experience, but now it has changed. It's not only about the curriculum, but mostly journalism teachers are not there to teach investigative journalism. Most teachers, in my experience, are not interested to teach it because situations in most schools are not kind of favorable. Right now, if you count journalism schools in the country, I think you may find about 22 universities are offering journalism courses. But if you see the capacities that they have, most schools do not have studios. Most schools do not have labs. So teachers are simply offering the theoretical aspect of the course. So the practice is missing, not only for this investigative journalism course, but even for basic news writing courses. Most schools are running without having proper capacities. But as we can see, because of the technology right now, journalism is kind of a dynamic subject, and teachers also themselves have to update themselves. Most teachers took training once and then they go there and they don't have the materials, they don't have the situation to upgrade themselves. So they run courses with the knowledge and the skill that they get only from the training that they took years back. So that's a challenge that I see.
Thank you. So one last question or I don't know, comment.
Thank you. So this issue has been what I was often asking, because we have been working with media houses, and the very problem that we encounter is that many people who practice, journalism doesn't have either journalism background or even doesn't go through short-term trainings like 3 months or around. So for me, especially for those areas like social media, like YouTube or whatever, for instance, we have been monitoring trials, and court reporting has its own techniques, because when you do a court reporting, you need to balance, like from the fair trial standards, from the rights of the accused, from the right of the court, from the public interest, from the right to access to information of the public. So it needs all this balancing, and the journalists, those reporters need to know some technical terms. And for that, of course, oftentimes some journalists who have low background, or either who have like some diploma in law or degree in journalism or whatsoever. But the very problem I see was that. So if most of the curriculums, like as we hear, if you have like a 3 credit hours investigative journalism through the 4 or 3 years course, then what are Ethiopian schools of journalism planning? Because this is very important, and we need to have at least specializations like in masters or other platforms. And what is the plan? Like to collaborate with civil societies, international media support organizations, because this is very important, especially in terms of fighting corruption, maladministration, and improving the lives of people, because we ask when we get accurate information. And it finally helps for social accountability for government officials, for the private sector, wherever. And I say this is a key aspect of journalism, this investigative journalism. And I also was part of the African Commission NGO Forum in 2018 in Banjul. And one of the directions given was like African government to protect and support investigative journalism. And journalists need to get also some kind of legal protection, especially those who are working in the sensitive areas. Then what are the journalism schools doing in this respect? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it has really been an effective impromptu session, because we learned a lot about, you know, even though it's short notice for you, like you just did it on your feet, but we really got a close-up look at what the academia is doing. So before I send you off back to your seats, I have one question for both of you, and I want you to just say a name and why. From your students, who turned out to be your favorite journalist and what made them great in your perspective? Like among your students who are currently practicing journalism, who do you think is your favorite? Well, the others, I know, but just pick a name and why they are great, and then we'll say thank you and send you back.
I will answer your question later, or may not. But I would like to reflect on what the gentleman here in the middle have said. Yes, you know, exceptions should not be standard. Standard is, I know, we make a standard based on the majority. Some exceptional journalists, you know, this is also our discussion in our classroom sometimes. Like when we said, no need of experience, no need of even finishing the high school, no need, because there is one journalist whose name is Carlos Nyonyo. You know, we don't need even to learn, you know, to go through high school, because you can be a journalist like Carlos Nyonyo. But I will ask them, give me another name. Give me more names, maybe 3 to stop. For example, my friend, you mentioned 2 programs, but we are talking about hundreds of programs. Those all hundreds of programs has to be best. For that, the skill is no question about the skill. Journalism skill is very important. Like that, the health skill is very, very important. If someone is assigned for health, he has to take a certain type of short-term course that will help him. Because you are maybe very strong man and you read, and then, but what about the majority? If news production is here, news analysis may be here, feature writing may be here, documentary is here, investigative is here. The last stage, how a person just without getting any journalistic skill or experience becomes an investigator? No, maybe exception, 1% you can mention, but you can't mention 10 people for me. So skill is very, very important. So we have to choose in Ethiopia, one of the two, or one, giving journalism training, BA, whatever, master, and then give short-term training in the field, and not moving journalists from agriculture and then health and then entertainment like that. Because people are learning based on the experience of, okay. The other point he mentioned, okay. Okay. I think, yes, I said what? And for two reasons, I don't want to answer this question. Two reasons. One, I have to be fair, and I am no more teaching BA students. I'm teaching MA students for the last maybe 5, 6, 10 years. So, and I think that they are doing well. So I don't want to say it, and I don't have any person in my mind.
Related to the issue of collaboration with other institutes, actually, this is decisive. You know, the university has an orientation to encourage university-industry relation. For School of Journalism and Communication, the industry is the Ethiopian media. Working this group, it is impossible to be successful. That is very important. But the question is how. For instance, different ministries actually, Ministry of Peace and Justice, may you have a course in peace journalism, just a recommendation. Election Board, Ethiopian Election Board, may you have a course in election reporting. Every organization suggests one, but this is impossible. We have a limited size of credit hours to be offered to the students. That is it. The alternative is to integrate all important contents into the courses we already have. That is important point. The other thing is continuous dialogue between the media and the academia is very important. Actually, the media is the foundation for the academia. The media has existed for 100 years without the School of Journalism in Ethiopia. But the School of Journalism is a latest phenomenon. That is the most important point. The other thing, I would like to appreciate Fasika from School of Journalism. I have many reasons, but I couldn't give the details.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tashagar and Dr. Jamal. Yeah, it's we just told them now, and they honored us with their time, their wisdom, their knowledge. So please appreciate them for us. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, the academia is playing a very significant role. And lately we start seeing really phenomenal journalists. And I'm glad you mentioned Fasika. She's also one of my favorites. So, all right. I think we should go to the next session now. We just did a little bit of reshuffling because of what has happened. So now the next session is going to be about sustainable journalism, or yeah, I think that's the best way of saying it. And the presenter is Lars Tallart, and he is the head of international policy and development at Fojo Institute. Just a brief background of Lars. Lars is a journalist and currently head of policy and international development at the Fojo Media Institute. Linnaeus University. He is also Sweden's representative to the UNESCO IPDC Intergovernmental Council. During more than 30 years, he has been an advisor to governments, media companies, the UN, OECD, PAC and NGOs on issues related to development, communication, and journalism. He is presently establishing a global network called Sustainable Journalism Partnership to explore how journalism and sustainability can be interlinked. So, ladies and gentlemen, now I will give you Lars.
Thank you, Meti, for that beautiful presentation. I still see myself just as a journalist, and I'm proud to be that. I'm standing up. It feels good to stand up. I'm a little tired. I suppose you are also tired. Could I ask everyone to stand up with me? Stand up for investigative journalism. And then I think that we have talked a lot. I have talked a lot. We have all talked a lot, but I think we have not discussed as much as we should. So in this session, I will really try to talk as little as possible. I have a tendency to talk too much, so I will try to restrain myself. But I think we will do this session like this. I will have kind of an introduction where I will introduce different topics. Most of all, I will talk about sustainable journalism, and then you will have the opportunity to discuss it in the groups. So I would like to ask you, especially those of you in the back, to fill up each table here, close, only 4 at each table because of the COVID restrictions, so not more than 4. And please try to find some new friends and split up a bit. So please, I ask you to come forward, fill up these tables and sit as close as possible so we can have a good dialogue. Would that be okay? We have lots of free seats here in the front, so please come in front. Okay. And here we have 3 seats. Here we have, I think, 3 free seats. Here we have 3 seats. There we have 3 seats. And here we have 2 seats, 3 seats. Here still 3 seats to be filled up. There's 1 free seat here. This table is completely empty. So, don't be shy. Here's, you want to join Badar University? Please come and join. So we have 2 more free seats here, 1 free seat here. Someone who wants to volunteer for this seat, free seat here, it's absolutely free. We will need to discuss a bit. Okay, so let me start with just a few words on sustainable journalism, the concept of sustainable journalism. I'll just adjust my screen here. First of all, I would like to introduce Fojo and IMS, the 2 organizations that I represent in this event. I mean, you see the Fojo logo, but the question is, what do we actually do? And this is what we do. We together with partners, I mean, with you, we strengthen journalism, enabling democracy and sustainability. And so this is a new concept that I'm going to talk about, sustainable journalism. But the partners is absolutely, without partners, we have no reason to exist. So our reason to exist is to strengthen partners. If we look at our Danish sister organization, so when you say Fojo IMS, we are two organizations, but we work very closely. So I call them our Danish sisters. And their slogan is good journalism, good societies. And as you understand, it's very much related to the concept of sustainable journalism and to what I want to talk about today. The concept of sustainable journalism was actually introduced by a number of Swedish and African journalists and researchers. So we did a policy brief where we kind of tried to define what could sustainability mean if we talk about journalism, and what could it mean in a sub-Saharan African context. If we look at the background, I'm repeating myself. Maybe some of you, I heard the sound in the last session was really bad. Is that correct? But now you hear me. Yeah, okay. I'm happy for that. So maybe, excuse me if I'm repeating myself, but maybe that is a good thing if you didn't hear me when I spoke the last time. So if we look at the outset, the trust for journalism is at historical low levels. I don't have any figures for Ethiopia. I have one figure for Bangladesh, a study we made. 13% have confidence in the media. Now, this is not only because journalism is bad, but it's mostly because of, with social media, people have great difficulties in understanding what is journalism, what is social media, what is disinformation, what is public relation, what is advertising. Everything is like in one big jar, and it's almost impossible to separate from these the different aspects. So quality journalism to be heard in the digital media landscape is extremely difficult. The algorithms for social media are made like the more sensational you are, the more attention you get. And the quality journalism to me is the very opposite of being sensational. It's about being balanced. It's about being fact-checked. It's about giving both sides. That is quality journalism. So we see that the entire structure of the social media landscape is actually against quality journalism, against quality investigative journalism. So no wonder that trust is low. We also know, we've heard a lot about disinformation and fact-checking. This is the way the people that work with disinformation, how they maneuver. They don't tell you that, you know, this is right and this is wrong. But as Steve Bannon said, you flood the channel with shit. That's what he said. So you have so much information out there, different versions of reality. So at the end, you just say yourself, I don't know. I don't know what is true. Is this true? Is this true? Is this true? Because you have so many different versions. And this is exactly how the disinformation and propaganda people work. And what do you do as a human being when you get so many alternatives that you can't choose? You say, I don't care. I don't know. And that is what is happening. That is what is happening now. And that is where we stand. Revenues is also at historic low because of the fierce competition from the social media companies. Typically in a country, the big tech giants, Google, Facebook, they take about 70% of the digital revenue. So when I was an active journalist in the golden days, there was so much money to do good stories. We need money to make good stories. We need to pay decent salaries to good journalists. The money is not there now. The money is in the tech sector, or in the oil sector, or in the mining sector. That is another problem. But it's not only journalism that is facing a serious crisis. It's also society at large. And for those of you who could hear something from the Water and Trees seminar, I think you heard some really, really good and also terrible examples on how the environment, the climate threat is acute. And I think that the next 10 years of our lives will be absolutely decisive for humanity. We are at a stage where we have never been before. We risk to ruin our own earth, our own home, because of pollution. And we have only seen the beginning of the effects. And I know here in Ethiopia, you see a lot of effects. In Sweden, we just have warm summer, so we're kind of happy about that. But I know that heat and even starvation is going to hit countries that are already has a warm climate. If we think that migration is a problem now, in 5 years, when we have climate migration, it will be a totally different scenario. So starting, I think, for this decade for me, I'm 63 years old. This is the most important decade in my life. And I think in all of our lives, this is decisive for our future. And journalism is absolutely, good journalism, investigative journalism is absolutely necessary. Because good truth-seeking journalism is necessary if you want a good truth-seeking society. The two are very much connected. Just to get back to you see, I already talked too much. I promise you I will give the word to you. Now I just keep talking. But this is how I see it. So I'm now in session 1, where I kind of explain sustainable journalism. I would like to, if we have the time, I also would like to discuss objective journalism, development journalism, and investigative journalism. I think that Dr. Jamal and Dr. Tshega gave a good introduction here. When we talk about how do we define journalism and how do we define a journalist, there are 1,000 different definitions, and I think we need to find a joint definition. And if we have time, I also would like to give you some good examples of good investigative sustainable reporting. So now I suggest 5 minutes discuss each table. What defines good investigative reporting? And we will not have, that everybody should present their results, but here we'll pick some groups, and after 5 minutes, make a little, ask you, what was your conclusion? So 5 minutes, what defines good investigative reporting? And for those of you who are online, if you are in a group, you can discuss. If you're alone, please reflect. What defines good investigative reporting? 5 minutes.
2 minutes left. 2 minutes. "45 seconds. Five, four, three, two, one, and we're done. Okay, so there is a very fast group right here. They just finished 3 minutes, 30 seconds into it. So what defines good investigative reporting, Mickey?
Thank you, Mati, for putting me on the spot. We've had a few responses. The first thing is, one is the methodology. So there has to be some form of transparency in how the investigative piece is done. So if there is some transparency in the methodology, we believe that it would make it a good investigative reporting. And also, not to take the opportunity from the others, I would only add one more, and that is the impact that this investigative report had brought about.
Great. So there is a very, very active group right here. So they were so engaged. So what Mickey hasn't said, add.
Thank you very much. We are talking about what defines good investigative reporting. We are focusing on the reporter who is doing the investigative reporting. He needs to have the passion. He needs to have the research ability to do the task, the enthusiasm. He needs to be somehow committed. And the other group mentioned, the stories that's going to be investigated needs to have some sort of impact. That's it.
I am so touched because investigative journalists are only men, because you kept saying he. Gender lens. Earlier, gender lens was mentioned. So Lars.
Thank you. And it's not like I'm going to give you the correct answer, because there is no correct answer. But I think it's interesting just to note that we are doing this fantastic journalism on investigative journalism, but it's really difficult to define investigative journalism. So I think this is also the nature of journalism. Also, journalism is actually quite difficult to define. I'll get back. We'll get back to talking about investigative journalism, different kinds of journalism, and how we define journalism. But I'll talk a little bit more about this concept, sustainable journalism, that we have elaborated. And as I said previously, it's confronting two challenges that are interconnected. Sustainability crisis facing society that is related to climate change, to inequality, poverty, and crumbling democracies, and the sustainability crisis facing journalism that is, of course, erosion of revenue streams, fierce competition from global social media companies, media capture, disinformation, authoritarian governments, and failing public trust in the media. And why I think this is absolutely central to the future of journalism, the future of good investigative journalism, is because if we want to have a sustainable journalism, and I think if there's one thing that the world leaders can agree on is that it is sustainability. And as you know, all the world leaders have actually agreed and signed the Sustainable Development Goals. Democracy is not that easy. To support investigative journalism, definitely not easy. But sustainability, that is something where we can unite. I think that's an important thing. But a sustainable society demands journalism that explicitly addresses the sustainability challenge faced by society. And I think that in this area, we can improve, because I also think that journalism must have the ability to meet this demand, to stay relevant and financially stable and financially viable. I think what we see now, and what we will see in the coming 2, 3, 4, 5 years, is that as more and more people are becoming aware of sustainability crisis, and not least the environment and climate change crisis, there will be new demands on journalism, and there will be new demands on the private sector. We will see demands for a green economy that will totally transform the private sector. And I think this is not only kind of a rich Western thing. I think this will happen everywhere. And I already see a lot of companies, a lot of private companies that sees that this is not only a crisis, but also actually a business opportunity. And you may think that sounds cynical, but I think that we have to think like that. And I think that good publishers should think like that, because there's the oldest saying, without economic independence, there cannot be editorial independence. We all know that, but sometimes we tend to forget it. So I think it's extremely important to talk about both sustainability of society, but also the economic sustainability of journalism.
Yes, I'm on a conference. Bob?
I don't know where they are. And as I see it, independent journalism is a necessary part of a democracy. It's very, very difficult to think about a democracy without independent journalism, at least for me. And I think that goes for all of you. Independent journalism has from the start been a necessary part of democracy. But with sustainable journalism, we also think it's an absolutely necessary element of sustainability. The more I think about this, the more the difficulties I have to view, to envisage a sustainable society without good investigative journalism. This can, of course, be discussed, but this is my view. Talking about defining concepts, just for everyone to know, when we talk about sustainability, we talk a lot about climate change and environment. But sustainability is actually, there are 3 pillars in the concept of sustainability: social, economic, and environmental sustainability, and they are also interconnected. So I think to make sustainability just an environment issue is a big mistake, because I think it has also other connotations. Social sustainability, the gender aspect, for instance, that you mentioned, is extremely important if we talk about a sustainable society and gender equal society. Economic sustainability, we need to have an economy that is not only profitable, but that also actually makes production in a way that does not destroy our world. Definitions. I'm a bit of a definition freak, because sometimes I think we talk about these big things and we don't agree on definitions. So we have at Fojo, we have talked a lot about what does journalism mean to us, and I think this is what we look, the function of journalism. It provides people with the information they need to make informed decision and hold people in power to account. That is our simple definition. We need to inform people, give them the information they need so they can make informed decision. Otherwise, you don't have a democracy. And we need to hold people in power to account to make sure that they keep their promises. So the only difference actually with this concept, sustainable journalism, is that we say that it's not only that people need to make informed decisions, but they also need to have the information so that they can make sustainable decisions, because sustainability will be a question of survival during the coming 10 years. We all know the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement. So it's actually a fantastic moment. 2015, the world leaders agreed on 1, the Sustainable Development Goals, and 2, the Paris Agreement. That is remarkable. That is unknown in history, I think. Now, the only problem here is that they don't keep their promises, right? And who are there to make sure that they keep their promises? That is journalism. That is the function of journalism. And for those of you who have worked with you, and we talk about 1610, 1610, 1610, I say, forget about 1610. The function of journalism is to make sure that the leaders, the people in power, that they keep their promises on sustainability that they made in the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. Here's another aspect of sustainability, because it's not only that we need to provide information in a way to make people informed, but we also have to think about future generation, because what is happening now is that we are destroying the world, and we have to make sure that the world that we leave behind is at least as good as the one that we live in. That, and my children and my grandchildren, I have 2 grandchildren now, and it's about their future. So journalism is not only about today or today's news, it's about today and the future. When we talk about environment, I love this quote from Jonathan Watts, who is the global environment reporter at The Guardian. We should not be environment activists. We are not activists. We are journalists. And as I see, it's a big difference being an activist and a journalist. But environment and climate change is just not another subject. It's not like sports and environments. It's the future, that it's the topic that decides our future. And as Jonathan Watts says, it is the prism, like a prism, through which everything else is to be seen. So whatever we look at, whatever subject we look at, we should look at it through the prism of environment and climate change. And as I said, sustainable journalism is not only about today. Every event today has an effect on the future, on our children, on our grandchildren. And it's not only that, but it's also that every local event has a global effect, and a lot of global events has a local effect. So when we talk about local journalism, I think we should stop talking about local journalism. I think we should talk about local global journalism. And I think we should not only, even if we deal with news, and that's what we do, but news, I think we need to redefine news. It's not only about tomorrow's paper, it's about tomorrow's paper in a long-term perspective. And that kind of challenges the whole media logic. So if we want to compile everything into one phrase, you can say that sustainable journalism contributes to improve the economic sustainability of journalism, while improving journalism's contribution to a sustainable society. So this is the elevator pitch. If you want to explain sustainable journalism in just one sentence, this is my suggestion. So I hope I didn't bore you. Now, next session. Is sustainable journalism a relevant concept in Ethiopia? Same logic as last time, Meti? You count down? No. Okay, if you want to say yes or no, that's okay. I mean, it's a free. You're free to do whatever you want. But if you want, Matthew wants a why at the end, and I can agree on that. I can certainly agree on that. So if you say no, why not? If you say yes, why? Are you happy?
Almost 1 minute is left. So your questions, your answers can be based on this definition. Okay, time is up. So is sustainable journalism relevant in the case of Ethiopia? If you say yes, why? If you say no, why not? So I think this group has been asking questions, so let's hear from them.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. Our answer is definitely yes, because it's very important, and also Ethiopian journalism need to practice this sustainability in terms of societal problems like building peace and security. Environmental issue also very important as African nation, and we have also a very important place in Pan-Africanism. So I think we need to have this kind of practices and in our media houses at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone say no? Anyone said no? Okay, let's hear one more yes. Explanation of one more yes. Oh no, let me give to another table. Okay, another table. Let's hear from this table.
Okay, so we discussed that it's very relevant because we discussed about as it connects the present with the future. So it's very relevant, and we were talking about the environment as well. Here in Ethiopia, I feel like we discussed that environment is very politicized because people feel like what's currently going on with the green legacy and everything, it furthers a political agenda than it's genuinely focused on sustainability. In addition to that, we talked about media viability and how it's a challenge in different media houses. I guess that's it.
Good. So that has been the discussion, Lars. So back to you.
Okay, thank you for your contributions. As I said, I'm a bit of a definition freak. I think it's extremely important that we define what it is actually that we are doing. And I think that so I would like to take this opportunity not only to talk about sustainable journalism, but also to talk about 3 other topics. That is objective journalism, development journalism, and of course, investigative journalism that we already have discussed. But maybe objective journalism is the most interesting when you go back to the roots and you say, where does that expression come from? Where does it come from? The idea of objective journalism. Well, so if we go on a journey and look for the roots of objective journalism, we have to go back to New York, 1919. And there we meet Walter Lippmann. I'm sure you've heard about Walter Lippmann. He's the father of modern journalism. He was the journalist that actually coined the concept of objective journalism. But what did he actually mean with objective journalism? This is Walter Lippmann's original interpretation of objective journalism. So objective journalism is based on a systematic, as opposed to scientific method, validating facts. And I'm sure you see the resemblance of some of your definitions of investigative journalism. So actually the idea of the journalist being like a god, standing outside reality, describing reality for ordinary people. I think this was very much the image or the definition of journalism when I was an active journalist back in the 80s and 90s. This was the general notion of what it meant, what objective journalism meant. Walter Lippmann, who actually coined the concept, he meant the opposite. He meant that objective journalism is admitting that we all have biases. Of course, my upbringing, my whole life has filled me with different kind of bias, thoughts, values, just like for everyone. No one goes free of that. We are not gods. Even if we are good journalists, we are only human beings. There can only be one God. And I think that this journey in history, and I would really recommend you to look back into the writings of Walter Lippmann and what he wrote about objective journalism, that is a revelation. The same thing goes with development journalism. That I think is another interesting topic. And maybe I'm on deep water because now I know that there are a lot of development journalist experts in this room. So maybe I should just be quiet. But I am a journalist, so being quiet is difficult. I think that the interpretation of development journalism has turned into saying that you should not criticize government because government is the voice of the people. That was not at all the original intention of the people that developed the concept of development journalism in the 60s and 70s. This is my interpretation. I'm sure there are many other interpretations, but I think the wording constructive critique of government is essential. And I think this is also very essential in sustainable journalism. We are journalists, but we want to contribute to a good society. We don't want to destroy society. That is not the role of journalists. That is not our role. But we want to contribute, but we want also to hold people in power to account, but in a constructive manner, and provide people with information on how development processes affect them. These are the original definitions of development journalism. And you can see how this coincides with Fojo's definition of journalism, and also very similar to sustainable journalism. So thirdly, I also think that investigative journalism many times is abused as a concept. It does not mean quick hit scoops gained by the leaking of documents. And we also see this, that we also often see this labeled as investigative journalism. Well, I would say it's not. It's being fortunate enough to have good sources and the trust from someone who wants to leak document for you. And that could very well mean that you are being used for other powers. We all know that. We had some good definitions here. this definition is from David Kaplan, who is the director of a global investigative journalism network. Systematic, in-depth, and original research and reporting, often involving the unearthing of secrets. I'm not saying that this is the correct information. This is David Kaplan's interpretation. And I think it's very similar to the definitions that you gave here previously. So what is then the big difference of sustainable journalism and investigative journalism, development journalism, objective journalism? Well, from my point of view, I think that investigative journalism, objective journalism, and development journalism have many similarities, actually. But I think that sustainable journalism adds a few things, because I think that all these three traditional concepts, one, are trapped in the traditional news logic. Tomorrow's paper is only today and here. Well, sustainable, that cannot be the way journalism functions in the world we live in today. It's also reporting on a specific is here and is now. And it seldom reflects on how decision affects future generation. Next time you make a story, have that in mind. How will this that you report on affect future generations? And how is it interconnected with other global events? And I think also that these three traditional concepts sees environment just as another topic, not as the prism through which everything else is to be seen. So I think that there's actually, in one way, a bigger difference between sustainable journalism and these three traditional concepts of journalism. Now, these are my thoughts around these four concepts, these kind of different ways of interpreting journalism. Mehdi, I would really like to hear your thoughts on what differences and similarities that you see. I have already shared some of my viewpoints, but the whole concept of sustainable journalism is still in its infancy. And we need a lot of good brains to further develop the concept and to better define the concept, and most particularly see how can it be implemented in the newsroom, in the classroom, and in research. Mehdi.
All right, and your 5 minutes starts now. What differences and similarities do you see between objective journalism, development journalism, and investigative journalism, and sustainable journalism?
Other journalisms are not objective?
No, we're not assuming anything. We mean that they are different.
Yeah, but we have a whole genre for objective journalism. I believe objective journalism should be the golden thread that
I don't think we should assume anything, but that is up to you to discuss. Yeah, I'm not a judge in this case.
3, 2, 1, and that's it. Okay, so now instead of me coming to your table and giving you the microphone, I mean, who would want to say this? Who would want to tell us your answers and discussion points? I'll give chance to 2 tables. I'd be happy if it is someone a table that did not present. Good.
Of course, we have discussed the point on the table. We have seen the 4 terms into 3 categories. The first, objective journalism, is not a distinct type of journalism, but it is a cross-cutting quality criterion of reporting, which emphasizes avoidance of bias. So it should be applicable in both development journalism and investigative journalism. That's one point. The other 2 terms, development journalism and investigative journalism, are expected to adhere to the quality criteria of objective journalism. That is the relation. The last one, sustainable journalism, is not a type of journalism, but it is a condition of the profession which is assumed to be persistent. So that is how we see it. But still, there are pointers that Dr. Jamal made.
I believe that sustainable journalism is the umbrella which we can achieve at the end of the day. Maybe after some more years, we have to work hard. Objective journalism, day to day. Today's news stories have to be objective, but it doesn't mean that they are sustainable, because we may not do this after 6 months. We may not have objective reporting after some days. So we achieve objective journalism for a few days or for a few years, but still we don't have sustainable journalism. So objective journalism has to be implemented in development journalism, in investigative journalism, but investigative journalism cannot be implemented in the day-to-day journalism. Day-to-day journalism demands an objective journalism, not an investigative journalism, because we can't produce investigative reporting every day, because it's a long time work. Development journalism, more focus on development. Everything may be related to development, but there are areas of development that needs more attention. So it focuses, but still it has to be objective. Complicated, maybe, I don't know.
Very good points. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. One more table. Anyone would like to add? Okay.
Regarding sustainable journalism, I think this term is not self-defining. The term sustainable journalism is not self-defining as you introduced to us earlier. It presupposes other explanations, for instance, sustainable environment, sustainable society, sustainable economy. Then based on these assumptions or preconditions, we can accept or we can understand the concept of sustainable journalism. But in this case, it's very difficult to comprehend it, because the quality of Ethiopian journalism today is not up to the standard or the minimum standard. So we don't want to be to sustain such type of journalism. It should be changed. It should be transformed. So the standard, we need to achieve first the standard journalism, then we need to sustain it. So sustainable journalism is not clear from the very beginning. You need to explain it, to define it first, then we can discuss after that. Because the question, what do you mean by sustainable journalism, is not clear at the first. Yes.
So back at you, Lars.
Thank you, and thank you for those Very good reflections. I hope that we can continue this dialogue, because finding these specific dimensions of journalism, I think it's extremely important, especially now when we move into a decade where we see challenges that we have never seen before. So we have to rethink journalism, we have to rethink economy, we have to rethink social structures. It's an enormous challenge, not only for journalism, but for the entire society. Just to wrap up, a few words. We need to provide people with the information they need to make informed and sustainable decisions, and we should hold people in power to account. And our role as journalists is to contribute to a better society doing that. I've said many times, this is the decade when the future of humanity will be decided. So I think it's an enormous responsibility we have as journalists. Environment and climate change is the prism through which everything else is to be seen. And lastly, you may call me an activist, but I think that every morning we wake up, think about our children, our grandchildren, and strive for them, that they will grow up in a world that is better than ours. Very last words. As you know, 2 journalists received the Peace Nobel Prize, Muratov and Maria Ressa. And this was the motivation. And let me read loud. And I think everyone, after a long day, listen to this. Free, independent, and fact-based journalism serves to protect against abuse of power, lies, and war propaganda. Without freedom of expression and freedom of the press, it will be difficult to successfully promote fraternity between nations, disarmament, and a better world order to succeed in our time. Thank you very much.
What better way than this to close a session, right? So later on, we'll also be celebrating those 2 journalists, investigative journalists that took the Nobel Peace Prize this year, 2021. Thank you so much, Lars. So during coffee time and later on, if you have more questions, if you would like to pick on his brain, so Lars is around, so you can go bombard him. Oh, good. Yes, the presentation. So he will give it to Ilham, and because Ilham has all your emails, she will forward it to you. All right, so let's take a coffee break. And when we come back, we're going to be celebrating 2 of our own. So enjoy your coffee.
was a brand new model called the Boeing 737.
And trust me, it gets better and better as we get deep into the day. And the second day is, well, of course, the first day was great. The second day was great. Third day will be great. But this particular part, I am super excited for many reasons. But the main reason is because I know how passionate this next two people are about the work that they do, and you will share with me in few minutes. So let's start with a screening, and that will give you an idea of what we are going to be talking about. And after that, I will invite my guests and introduce them. Then we'll have a discussion. So the screening starts now. All right. I think you got the glimpse of what we're going to be talking about. So that documentary is going to be released very soon. You'll know all the details just in a few minutes. But today we are inviting here on the podium two of the people who were involved in the production. And these two people, I'm sure most of you know them already, are Hadra and Nugusu. So let me just give you a brief bio of each, and then I will invite them back. Hadra is a multi-award winning journalist and producer, including the Emmys for producing ABC's Falling from the Sky, the Gerald Loeb Awards for Distinguished Business and Finance Journalism, for breaking news for her work with the New York Times, the Rose d'Or Broadcasting Awards as part of the production team with BBC News Damming the Nile, a two-part 360-degree video series that extensively covers the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD. She also runs Nubia Media and Communications, a full and integrated service creative film with capabilities of providing live streaming, TV, radio, digital productions, media, communications, technology consultancy, campaigns, branding, events, research, etc., using their in-house most efficient and cost-effective solutions. And the second amazing human being as well, who took part in this project, is Nugusu Solomon. He is the cinematographer behind multiple local and international productions. He is the director of photography, DOP, of the Ethiopian part of this year's 42nd Annual News and Documentary Emmys Award, Falling from the Sky, under the category of Outstanding Continuing Coverage of a News Story in a News Magazine. He's also the CEO of Nubia Media and Communications. Nugusu has a thorough working knowledge of current and emerging best practices, mainly on media and technology, including but not limited to deep understanding of cybersecurity, vulnerability analysis, and ethical exploitation, understanding of artificial intelligence and system designs ranging from pattern recognition to self-driving systems using neutral network and deep learning, software and hardware engineering skills, as well as coding capabilities in multiple languages. He is the co-author of Social Media Landscape Mapping of Ethiopia. So without further ado, help me in warmly welcoming these two incredible people that I have the bragging rights of saying they're my buddies, Nugusu and Hadra. So, had it not been for COVID, by now, they would have been back with their Emmy in the hand and presenting here. But the Emmy statuette is on the way, I heard. So once it comes, I want you to promise me that I will hold it and take a picture. Okay, good. I'll have the Emmy in my arms for the first time. All right. I can't even say it enough, but I personally am very proud of you and thank you for making Ethiopians very proud, because now you became the first Ethiopians to be awarded an Emmy. Yes, they're the first. Okay, I think I'm too excited. All right. Let me tone it down. Okay, how did it start? How did this project start?
Thank you. That was a heartwarming introduction. So when the plane crashed, so I was the one who broke the story internationally. So I went to the crash site. I spoke to family members. We spoke to witnesses, and it was one of those stories that attracted the international media and the international community in general. And you know, looking at that story and following up with everything that was happening afterwards, it was something that we knew it's not going to just end by being a breaking news. It cannot just be covered as a breaking news. We needed to do more research, more investigations. We had to talk to lots of experts, which he's going to talk about more in a little bit. So that's what we wanted to do. And luckily, when we were, you know, when ABC reached out to us, it was something that we've already done, that we knew, we were familiar with the story. And you know, they are really amazing team members who from the beginning until the end that we were able to work on this together. This story is not just about, you saw briefly the part about the US and Ethiopia, but it also covers the Lion Air, which is the Malayan Air that had the same incident about 5 months prior to the Ethiopian Airlines crash. So this crash actually, you know, it claimed the lives of 346 people. 157 are Ethiopians, which is, you know, it's, I think we all mourned with the families that lost their family members, and it was sort of became an Ethiopian, an Ethiopian loss. It's not just a few family members, and that has to be told. The story from the Ethiopian side, what happened to the Ethiopian families had to be told, because the story would be empty without this. And it was, it was incredible that we managed to tell the story. We balanced between investigative journalism and the human interest story, and that's why it won the award.
Okay, so from the beginning, the story was quite unique because there's sort of a connection, as she explained, with the Lion Air incident, but until the first few hours or the first few moments after the crash, it was just another plane crash story. But the connection started building up when we started talking to pilots and people that work with the aircraft as well. Some pilots who wanted to remain anonymous that work for Ethiopian Airlines or told us that they had few problems with that aircraft specifically, regarding the control, that the plane takes automatically overrides the pilot's control, and it cannot be you cannot override that control unless you restart the whole system, which will probably take you more than a minute or two. which by then it will be too late. So they were already familiar with what happened with the Lion Air crash, the pilots, and Boeing gave software patches to mitigate this problem. But that software patch apparently didn't work with the Ethiopian. So the connection started merging together and started developing and developing. Luckily, it was a very public story. So it was, most of the information was available, at least at the time. And it wasn't hard to be informed of what happened. But the trick was to actually understand how the planes work, what was at fault, and why it happened, and what could be done to mitigate that situation. But the story quickly developed to Boeing not taking responsibility and not mitigating the problem correctly, rather than just a plane crash from an East African airliner. As you know, Ethiopian Airlines is a very reliable airline. Everyone here knows that. Most of you, I assume, came with Ethiopian Airlines. Even after the crash, people weren't scared to go on Ethiopian Airlines. In fact, I remember that time we had one of the consultation meetings with Fojo IMS too. And after the crash, people from Fojo IMS didn't have any problem coming with Ethiopian Airlines. So automatically you assume there is more to the story. And I think that's how everything started.
Yes, actually, that's very profound, because the Lion Airlines crash was not, was impactful, but Boeing easily got away, or tried to get away with it. But the fact that Ethiopian crashed added so much weight into the case, and that gave credibility to to Ethiopian Airlines. But like that credibility came into play. So this is a unique production. It's unique because it's documentary. There are facts in it, but it's also a human story. I think that makes it more, how do we say it? That's what attracted the viewers and all this award givers. So tell us how you incorporated that. How did you bring those two, and what was the process like?
So like I said earlier, this production is done with in 3 countries, which is one of the things I think even the panelists yesterday Maya was talking about, which is collaboration with the people from different countries, from different cities. So we were able to work with journalists and producers who have the experience of telling such stories. But most importantly, there were teams that were focusing on the technical aspect of it, and there were teams that were focusing on working on the human interest story. So the trick was, and again, this collaboration that comes to play is to make sure the stories that we were telling from the US, from Malaysia and Ethiopia have the same tone, they have the same continuity, and also the same information that the documentary in general wanted to tell. So we managed to work with different incredible teams from these 3 countries. We were able to do at the same time our own research and our own investigation, so that we will be able to understand the story that we're actually filming and the story that we're actually telling. So even when we had a meeting, when we're talking about, so we need to go to this place and film, or when we need to go to this family members and talk to them, we needed to understand how to, sensitively talk to the families. So that way we were able to make them feel comfortable for them to talk to us how they actually felt. And that was something that we worked with these different teams. And I think that's why at the end, when you look at the documentary, you will see family members, you know, crying on camera, you know, being vulnerable on camera, which is very rare. And that was because we managed to make them feel comfortable and follow few steps and guidelines that even as a person, how do we want people to talk to us if we are in this kind of situation? And that's how we managed to tell the human interest story, because as you know, usually one of the reasons investigative reporting are considered a bit boring is because they're data driven, they're like, you know, that dry in, you know, like like you need to like, here, take it and swallow it. This is the information, this is the documents I have. But when you bring in that information from experienced pilots like Captain Sally and people who worked at different airliners and even at Boeing, when you bring them in, and even when they're talking about the dangers of the incident, and then at the same time, when you comfortably talk to the families and tell you what happened, that's how you make the story, you know, interesting or something, a human interest.
Nugus, I want you to tell me about your experience in accessing information, in you know, collecting all this technical data, because you were mentioning about the faults and the system, but how open were they? How did you manage to get all that kind of critical information?
Well, the good thing about this story is it is unfolding right in front of us for the whole year, and you have to be there to follow it wherever it goes, and that's exactly what we did. Even with that, we had few obstacles regarding getting information, even from Ethiopian investigators, because the whole investigation was undertaken with the Ethiopian Transport Ministry of Transport, and also the aviation was involved. But even though Ethiopian Airlines was not at fault with this crash, and it's not implicating Ethiopia or its airlines in any way, but there is still a culture of hiding information, and you have to work through that to get the information you require. And luckily for us, it's a very international story, and Ethiopian Airlines wasn't as transparent as we expected, because, as I told you, the culture of hiding information is, and also we tried to speak to investigators on the Ethiopian side, and it was very difficult as well. So your reports usually get these problems every time, even though I mean, we got lucky because Boeing was at fault on this, and we were able to reach to aviation reporters, and as she said, veteran pilots like Captain Sally were involved in the project, so that the whole thing can come together. So the rest of it is you're gonna have to do your own investigation at the end. You have to understand if it's a plane crash story you're doing. You're gonna have to understand how planes work. Ask your fellow pilots, ask your fellow mechanics, and just talk to them. And that's exactly what we did. We spent hours and hours reading about the MCAS system and how the angle of attack is controlled by the MCAS system, and how sensors of the angle of attack should have been redundant, which sometimes can also be part of what you do. For example, as video makers that work in different areas and in different climate conditions, you have to know how to handle your data, how to take care of your data. So whenever we do recording, whenever we make a video, we make redundant recording. So that means we record in 2 memory cards at the same time. So that's the thing we do. And for you, knowing you do that, it's actually funny to find out that Boeing doesn't have 2 sensors to check whether a plane is floating or upside down. They only have 1 sensor. So at the end of the day, the story you're making sort of comes in your daily life, and that's the way you can use that to understand what's going on. So you put yourself in the family's shoes, you put yourself in the pilot's shoes, and you put yourself in the cabin crew family shoes, and then you try to understand the story from then on. Well, as we seen on the earlier discussions, the rest of it, I guess you're gonna have to Google.
Wow, where investigative reporting takes you. That's just fascinating. Hadra, I want to come to you. I actually want to take you to the crash site, because watching that here and watching that on media 2 years ago, that was, even watching it on screen, it was so shaking. I remember shaking from my core watching it the first time, like that deep hole. And then eventually how the people, not just the families, but also the people living around that area, how they are impacted. So because you've been interacting with these people, with the community, with the families, colleagues, just share us that experience and the impact on you.
I'm, to be honest, still recovering from, it's a very, because I thought after we finished filming, I thought, okay, we're done. But now we're back here now talking about this. So on the same day the crash happened, we, the whole day we were all waiting to get to the crash site. Then after we got a clearance, we went there about, I think, late afternoon. It was getting a bit dark, and the road is really bad because it's a very remote area. So when I got to the crash site, you could see like remainings of tiny pieces of human remains. Yeah. I saw a small shoes, and then I saw an album cover of photo, a wallet of some sort, and like clothing and remainings of baggage, jewelry, everything, like everything that passengers packed, for themselves or for whoever it is, and maybe it could be a gift, I don't know. So all of that was torn in pieces and mixed with the with the ground, and you just go there. There's this really very strong smell that just pushes you back, and it was covered. It was impossible to access it, but when we had a camera, and it was a crew. Security were able to, they allowed us to get closer, and the debris that the plane fell into was as big as this room. Maybe it was massive. I truly never saw anything like that. We see plane crashes on TV and movies, but when you're actually there and looking at that, I just couldn't stop thinking about the last minute of those people. And I was thinking, maybe some of them who actually, fainted, but that's probably like a lucky break, because maybe who knows what the others were thinking. And that was just the beginning of at the beginning of the incident. And then we continued going there, after a few months. But when we go back there, we would see these small sort of like offerings from different people, from different cultures. Like Chinese people, they would put like bananas and pictures of their friends. And of, drinks, they would break an alcohol and just put it on the side. You would see flowers. I remember until like a year after that crash, when I went back there were still remainings of the plane. I brought a couple with me because I just wanted to have, I wasn't even sure if it's allowed or not, but it was just, you look at that and then you just, it's impossible to do that. And then it just continued, it never stopped. Then when we started filming this documentary, one of the things we did was to film the church ceremonies. So as the cemetery, I remember we went inside, we were filming. So there were prayers. And we got there early. There's one person would come in, they would cry. Another one would come in, they would cry. And then like one by one, the room just filled by people just crying for different people. And what's amazing? We were discussing yesterday, one of the things that we Ethiopians are very are organized and known for is our funeral ceremonies. And usually we would just go to a funeral to mourn one person and to celebrate one person. But this was people from different family members celebrating or mourning different family members. And you could feel the collective mourning of people in one room and just crying together, and just like comforting each other. When I was filming, I was sort of like leaning down and filming across. There was a fresh body and it was, I could smell it, but I was there. I was saying like, what, I have to continue filming. Maybe it's something, I didn't know what it was. But then I later found out that it was a fresh body that was buried there. And I couldn't, like, I was throwing up. And there was also that emotional, you could feel the pain of the people in one room. There was that emotional thing that was like a family member. We were filming, holding a camera, and we were just shaking, and we looked at each other. We were like, we had tears falling down our cheeks. We don't even know them, it was so immersive, and that was something that we needed to show. And we did that. We took a close-up of faces. People were really, they were also willing for us to film that, and we needed to show that. And for 3 days, I couldn't, like, I changed clothes, I took a shower, I couldn't get the smell off of my body, or even when I go to my house. It was, so that again, and then that was that. Then after filming that, we had to go to the Pilots Association again, and again be part of the friends and family of the pilots. And then looking at the father, you could look at his body and just see like how broken he was. So it's this human interest story is that being able to show how much of an impact something has on regular human beings, and how do you show that when you're writing a story? You describe it just like I'm talking about it now. You can talk about this, the shoulder and the faces, the crying, the screaming, the smell. But when it's video, how do you show that? So that was something that we needed to navigate and be able to tell the story. I think.
Whew, that is so intense. Wow. Nugus, let me come to you and let's talk a little bit about collaboration, because this is a work of people located in different countries and trying to bring different information, different footage together. What was that collaboration process like from these team members situated in these different countries and bringing that all together?
Well, it's very interesting. For me, it was a very good experience because usually when we do things here, at least, we do things in our own. We don't collaborate with other media members or with other media houses. No matter how big the production or the storytelling is, you're going to tell the story the worst way possible rather than work with somebody else. But every person in the team or everyone has a different expertise, and it's a weight lift off your shoulder every time somebody's helping you with something. But with that, coordination is key. For example, we have to update each other because the story was developing right in front of our eyes. There is a meeting happening here. Some families are meeting lawyers somewhere here, or and then you have to find a place to interview somebody at some place. So, and then once you get that footage, all the footage you got from field or from an interview, you have one or 2 terabytes of data that we usually don't film that much data because our broadcast quality is lower than theirs. So for us, that was a huge data, and that is also a redundant. We have also redundant recording. We have also a backup of a backup. And all of that combined, we were producing daily 1 and 2 terabytes of data every day. So you have to sort that out. You have to time code everything so that whoever is editing it on the New York side would not be lost in the footage and can easily navigate through it. So there is a hierarchy of how you sort out your footages, and also we usually operate, even though she's a producer and I'm the DP, we both have cameras, and we both have camera A and camera B, and you have to sync those footages with time codes so that, again, the footages can be easily put together. So you do all that, and after you produce 4 terabytes of data, how do you take it to New York? So you're gonna have to upload data all night with our internet. So that didn't work. So and then we had to ship the footages back to New York with DHL, and for company reasons, it has to be said, the hard drives have to be sent to Addis to be sent back to New York. That didn't work because the hard drives were stuck at customs. Yeah, so 2 hard drives for redundancy, they were stuck at customs and no one knows where they are. And to make things worse, it shows that we have signed and accepted the hard drives and took them. DHL said they're already taken. So we had to purchase new hard drives here and ship them, and also finish the upload, get 2 backups of that file in our side, and also upload it in our cloud services, which will also take 1 to 2 terabytes of data. I don't want to bore you with the detail, but even though you have to go a bit more lengths when you work with a team, at the end of the day, the product you get would be much better because it's a collaborative effort. We filmed the Ethiopian side of the story, yes, but if we decided to do that documentary, we couldn't have spoken to Captain Sally. So that collaboration will get you where you want to go, and will give you that upper hand of doing a better job.
Something that investigative journalists experience, like soldiers, like emergency personnel, is PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health. That is something that we all should be concerned about, because this kind of intense stories take a toll on us. How are you handling, or how are you looking after your mental health? How are you trying to cope up with all this?
It's like I was saying earlier, I thought it stopped somewhere, but it just continued developing, and also because we're also sort of part of the story, as you saw, like I was also one of the interviews in the story talking about the incident here. We are still following with what's going on, especially with the families, the court proceeding. So yeah, we're following that, and you know, the Boeing has resumed flight now. So listening to that, talking to people, you know, you haven't really seen the video. There is a 9-year-old Ethiopian boy in the video that says, why would anyone fly? Why would Boeing do this? Why would Boeing, why are they trying to make children like me lose their father? You know, and you look at that, obviously you would fly, you know, it's a thing, it's a human nature to sort of forget things, and we try to move on, but there is, like you say, there's PTSD. So I punch bugs. Yeah, that's what I do. I just punch bags.
I just talk to friends. Yeah, but one thing you have to understand is it's still the two of us. We always have each other's back, and we always talk to each other. So it's not just an award-winning team, it's also award-winning support group, I think.
Yes, that too, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, one thing I forgot, I think. One of the things we did when we were talking about access to locations and information, one of the things we did in the documentary was recreate some of the things. So filming inside the airport, you saw the bags rolling. So that's one of when you know, as a journalist, when you're doing stories like that, what you can do is you are not always at the location. You don't always have the original footage, but it's possible to recreate the incident in a very, you know, very smart and subtle way. So that was one of the ways we used to tell the story as well.
All right. I know you want to ask questions. I told you I was too excited to even look at this way. So if you have questions, raise your hand and you can direct it to the bus, ma'am. Already? Okay. Let's have mics rotate and but thank you so much, Hadra and Nugus. This is just an amazing journey. I wish it did not happen, but it happened, and I'm glad you were there to telling the story from the very beginning. Thank you once again.
Okay, thank you very much. Since this story has been very touching, everyone in the world was watching, and I'm very proud to know you guys. You have done a great job. But I was like assuming when I was there as a reporter, and then you don't know how the story grows. I mean, like, that is the thing that is difficult. You can't tell what you feel, but you need to take care of like how it goes. Like, had it been like the fault of the pilot, had it been not the fault of Boeing, but whosoever would be responsible. So how you manage to keep that so that you guys are safe. I mean, like, we are happy that you are safe finally, because you have been there, because you have been reporting, and there could be some kind of accountability or like that. So, and how was the security situation? Because for incidents like this, accessing for especially for okay. So how was the security? I mean, like, you told us finally that you had you had some kind of filming so that it has some kind of continuity for people who need to see how it grows. But how was it possible for you guys to have access in terms of security? Thank you.
So the first thing we always take care of is our permits and our licenses. Wherever we go, we have papers supporting us from the production company. We have our business licenses, we have our ID cards, and also we have permits from the Ethiopian Broadcasting Authority. And that is basically like the 101 of going anywhere in Ethiopia. But with that being said, I can tell you a story. The second time we wanted to revisit the crash site, and the crash site, as you know, is in a very remote area, and in fact, it was recently, like, with good resolution, updated on Google Maps. It was not even available. So when we went to the crash site, it was right during the rainy season, but we were still rushing to make it to Thanksgiving in America. So we had to go during the rainy season, and the whole area is flooded, and the car couldn't go through the roads, and we had to walk. So we had all of our gears in our bag, and one advice is wherever you go with a camera, make sure you take the gears that you will only use. And I learned that the hard way. And second thing is get a good shoes. So we had to walk 15 kilometers deep inside the areas where there are only farmers and shepherd boys. And then we started filming the area, and the locals, the locals at the area, they did not know. The story was more or less forgotten at that point, and they did not know what we were doing. So when we come back, we were detained by police, and we were told to stay until the whole police showed up and asked us why we were there. And there were other tensions that I did not want to discuss with the police in that area, and they thought we were doing something else. So we had to carefully and more and importantly, as friendly as possible, explain why we're there, show everything, every license we have, and then circumnavigate that situation so that we can continue our way. And thankfully, the people we encountered with, the police forces we encountered with, were very friendly. They understood the situation. They held us for a couple of one or 2 hours, and then they decided to let go. But that being said, I would like to say one thing about the locals in that area. The first time we went in that area to film, it was on the anniversary. I mean, as part of the project, at least on the anniversary of the crash. And the crash, the family members did not want to praise the journalists to be part of that ceremony. So we were held back by security forces so that we can't cross at least 5 kilometer range to the crash site, and we were staying there. But it's the family members' wishes, so we have to respect it. We just stayed in that area for the whole session. But the locals in that area were so what's the word? So touched that we were standing there on the sun, and they were feeding us basically breakfast and lunch, and they gave us interviews. They even gave us the local booze, so we kept company. So it's more of an experience rather than a security or risk kind of thing. So in any case possible, that's a possibility, and you know it. So when it happens, you just deal with it as it comes, I guess. But make sure you have your papers.
Thank you, Hatra and Ngusu. Congratulations. I have one question for Ngusu and another for Hadra. In the middle of your explanation, Ngusu appears a kind of aviation expert. I was impressed actually. There are vocabularies which are not common for the ordinary audience. So my question is, how did you manage to report and write on such special issue? Because you don't have any background as an aviation expert. That's a point. For Hadra, as you remember, and as you have aptly expressed it, the situation is tragic, and people were in a bitter grief. So normally, the ethical recommendation is to leave these people alone because they are in the saddest situation. But you did it. You overcome the ethical challenge of recording people in or broken heart people with the saddest situation in a very odd situation. So how did you manage to overcome the ethical challenge of reporting the heartbroken people? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you're right, of course. But so two things. One is we months before we went to the memorial services in the location and the houses of the victims, the family members. We were talking to them. We off the record, over the phone, meeting them, just creating connection between us and the families and making them feel comfortable that what we're going to do is anything and everything they would allow us to do. We're not going to cross any line. We're not going to dramatize the situation, but we will just report it. And of course, sometimes they will ask for reputation, and we have managed, to make them feel comfortable by talking to them, showing them our previous articles and, stories, videos that we've filmed. But when it comes to video, the other thing that we did to make them feel comfortable is that our cameras were not on their faces. We were very far away from them. Like right now, there is a camera behind you over there, and it's pointing at this stage. So it's over there. It's not intruding anybody, but using the lens, using the kind of equipment that we use is specifically, it's for this. So we filmed them from very far away using a lens that would enable us to capture something without being on their face. It's very intrusive when you have something on somebody else's face. So as you film stories like this or documentaries like this, it's very important what kind of gear, what kind of equipment that you use, so that you'll be able to tell your story without compromising the situation of the family members. I don't know if that answered your question, but those are just the two things. Yeah.
Okay, so I am not an aviation expert, but I did a research on my own as part of the story, because I am this was the Ethiopian story. I'm the primary DP, which is director of photography, and I point the cameras. The question is, where do I point them? So in order to answer that question, where to point the camera, you have to do your research. What do you record? It's not just about interviews. One of the things I learned from over the years, both of us, we worked with other teams from different media organizations, at least foreign media organization. And when they come to Ethiopia to work on a story, they come as a pair or three people, and they work sort of together with a minimum gear as possible, because they they come into another country, and they work together in every aspect of the story so that they can help each other out. The producer sometimes asks the questions, the editor sometimes asks the questions, the cameraman also comes up with questions. So as the director of photography, some of the footages you saw, once, for example, I had a, let's say I had a shot of an airplane to show that the plane was going to early in the morning. It was going to, as you saw in the narrative. So for, you have to think of the story every time when you point at something. If you point your camera at a Boeing 737 MAX 800, then, and you talk about, and the story is going to talk about MCAS, your cameraman should know where the MCAS is and point in that direction. So it's your responsibility to know what the story is, and it's your responsibility to research that. Of course, you don't have to do that, but you can tell more story when you do your research. You can tell more stories when you understand which plane is a Boeing plane and which plane is an Airbus plane, which software update it needs, which you've seen a couple of close-up shots of pilots trying to control their planes. And for us, for people who don't know how planes work, it may be insignificant how these details are portrayed, but pilots also should relate to that story, and you should not create false narration, or at least something that is done by a non-expert. So it's better to know beforehand where you're going, what you're shooting, and what kind of story you have in your head before you start shooting. And also you have to understand that more than 90% of the shoot you do will not make it to the final cut, but you still need that 90% shot. So unless your cameraman understands the story, then the story you tell would be useless.
Because we only have 5 minutes before dinner, we'll take this last question and then they will answer, then we'll wrap it up. But we definitely will continue this conversation, and I'm sure we'll have another chance to talk more and even to screen it.
Thank you very much. It was really emotional listening to these stories, but I know it was emotional worldwide, but listening to the process of making this video is also more emotional. So my question is, what is the top story you haven't told in this video, but you're going to live with it for the whole life? Like, it might be the culture or a story of a person involved in that, or might be different that you couldn't tell because of ethics or something else, but live with you as a journalist. Thank you.
That I mean, there is a
I can't tell you that, but I can be cryptic about it. So the plane crashed in a rural areas where farmers are all grazing the land. So what happened to that land? That's the story we couldn't tell because the bigger picture was Boeing at this point.
Okay, because the answer was very short, I need to give chance for another person, but that's actually very, very figurative. You know what happened to that land, and we've seen what happened to that land. It just got underground. So your story, the one that you cannot tell, went underground as well. Okay.
Congratulations, and dinner is on me.
I will see you tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much. I want to congratulate both of you for this successful project. I just want to know how you find the chemistry of working together. These kinds of projects require that kind of chemistry that helps you go that distance to produce these kinds of important documentaries or contents. Thank you very much.
When, you know, looking at that footage and looking at us sitting here and playing amicable and responding to those questions, you think we have a chemistry, but we're fighting all the time on shoot plans. No, this is not the footage we need. That's the footage you need. No, this is not how we do it. It's supposed to look like that. We are fighting all the time. And it's not just because of this, but with everything that we are fighting during editing sessions, you know, even in selection of music, selection of text, everything that we do, we're always fighting and arguing. And at the end, the products are always great. But one other best thing is when you're working on something, it's better to have people with different skills. So for me, I have the production side, writing, and, you know, looking at things and saying, okay, did we film it this way? It tells better story or not. And he is a tech wizard. So anything that we're doing, we would always find a way to, how do we navigate this and then find some sort of tech solution to it. It could be colors while editing. It could be, you know, something, could be anything, but we'll always find a tech solution for it. And yeah.
She has a habit of showing up in a very nice footage with a camera. She just like walks by, and I have a nickname for her. I call her your own my shot. Your own my shot. Your own my shot. So it's a fight, but if we agree upon everything, usually we end up not liking the end product. So we appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Hadra and Nagus. Mine is very short, as I said. I was wondering about the post-production process you went through, because Nagus, you told us that you were having too much footage, like 2 terabytes, and how difficult it was. I mean, how did you manage, you know, the post-production phase, and what kind of lesson did you take out of that? Thank you.
The post-production, as I told you, was a team effort. So your responsibility as a DP and the Ethiopian side producer is to make sure that the footages mean something to the editor in New York. So one of the things I learned is usually when this may be a little bit technical, but when we film multi-angle camera shots, we use this application based on artificial intelligence to sort out the footages, to sync them together, which takes some time. And for a smaller project, you can handle that kind of data. But if it's a big project that you're producing 4K footages with a flat profile that has a wide dynamic range, which take a lot of data on your hard drive, your computer would struggle to sort out those footages. So instead, what you do is you make sure you have a continuous time, a synced time between all cameras, time codes, and so that you can use that time code to sync up all footages. And you need to label the footages properly. You need to you need proper folders. So this file sorting, when you apply it for smaller projects, it may be a bit redundant, but for a production that takes this long, because this is, even though it took us a year to produce this materials, this is not actually our longest running production. We're still running a production, a documentary, sort of an expose that lasted for until now 3 years, and there's also another production we're still running that is still going for 1 year. So we sort all these footages together so that we can make sense out of it. Maybe once we do the once we finish the post processing of these footages, at least the final cut, maybe I can answer your question on how I dealt with it.
All right, so before I give them, a minute or two to wrap up, I would like to answer your question about how they work together, Brooke, the dynamics, because I know them off production area, so offset, let's say. So we hang out every now and then, and what always amazes me about those two people is they're best friends, but with different outlook. So Hadra is very passionate, very objective, like she makes her point. She's like, he tells you, right. So he is very witty. He has that sense of humor. So let's say she is so passionate and probably she's mad at something. He knows how to diffuse that. And would be like, okay, they are about to kill each other. And then a minute later, we're all laughing together. So they have this amazing dynamic. So I think when you build a team, make sure that you have, like you create, either pick your friends with different skills or make your people your friends. And I always say you should be able to hang out with the people you work with, especially with this kind of projects. Otherwise, you can't. This is not a 9-to-5 kind of job. So you have to have that synergy in values and in personalities, but you have to be different people at the same time. All right. So let me give you one more, 1 minute. A minute and a half, okay, to wrap it up.
Thank you so much. I know this is very late, but I just want to say that I am very happy. It's sinking in that I am the first Emmy-winning producer in Ethiopia, which is great. I'm very happy about that. It's sinking in. One thing that I really like about this is, like I said, it integrates both investigative and human interest story. There were over 2,200 contents that were submitted this year for the 42nd News and Documentary Emmy Awards. And there were over 800 professionals reviewing all those contents. And I'm very happy that what we did, what we managed to tell the story, the families, everyone that's involved. Our Ethiopian also, expert, aviation expert, Kale Jesus, who was kind enough to give us an interview. Everyone, this is, the families, Mahalet and her son. It's a very emotional, challenging, but also really a rewarding story. So, and also thank you for all of you for being here and listening to us and interacting with us.
Well, investigative reporting is easy and fun, right? You know, it only takes 2 terabytes of documentation per day, and 1 year of filming, going to, you know, a remote area, carrying all your equipment, getting through sunny days, rainy days, you know, getting held by security, police officers. It's just fun. It's easy. Let's keep doing that. Well, unless we do that, we cannot tell human stories and we cannot bring the truths, can we? So once again, the warmest of applause. Put your hands together for Nugus and Hadra. And now you can say, you know, I was this fellas. We shared a stage. Oh, I can say I shared a stage with the first Emmy winners of Ethiopia. So, ladies and gentlemen, we already start celebrating. So let's continue the celebration while having dinner, and we will go to the other side. We'll be ushered. Tomorrow 10 o'clock, we'll start the 3rd and final day of the 17th African Investigative Journalism Conference, and it's happening in 5 cities simultaneously. I cannot say thank you enough times. And I hope you have been enjoying the second day. And let's get off to dinner and grab some drinks and chat some more. How about that? And I cannot say good night right now because we'll say that later. All right, enjoy the evening.